Jones. If we can get that to roll.
Did you know that 12 days ago, your attorneys messed up? They sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years, and when informed, did not take any steps to identify it as privileged or protected in any way. And as of 2 days ago, it fell free and clear into my possession. And that is how I know you lied to me when you said you didn't have text messages about saying it.
All right, before Alex Jones answers that rather bizarre exchange question there in the damages, quote-unquote, trial out there about the Sandy Hook victims, let me let you know what we have on the show. Welcome to GAMcast for, is it August the 4th, 2022? Man, is time flying. Another slow news day out there. They're still counting votes in Maricopa County and in Washington, so we don't really quite exactly know any election results. Probably have to cover those on Friday's show. We're going to go over Alex Jones, bring you up to speed, and kind of break you a little, give you a little inside baseball and just how railroaded he's getting down there. If you can't laugh, you'd cry. It's really kind of sad. We've got some Trump news out there. We've got some Ron DeSantis news out there. Christopher Wray, the RINO that runs the FBI, is testifying before Congress, and you're probably hearing about that. We're going to break that down for you as well, and maybe some libs of TikTok may make an appearance. We'll see if we can get it all in. I hope to finish the show early today because there's really not a whole lot going on. So I'm going to start that over because a lot of people may have missed some things in there that are really important. But as you'll recall, he basically said, the gist for the layperson is, hey, I got your phone. I've got your phone, and now I know you lied to me, right? And then there's all that stuff at the beginning about the lawyers, and so a lot of inside baseball stuff going on here I want to break down, make sure you understand, because what's happening to Alex Jones is a travesty, and you have to understand that this is always how they break down institutions and they take rights and money and that type of thing. They go after somebody that's unpopular, right? And you establish we're gonna have a situation whereby we can go after someone. It's an extreme situation. It's an emergency. We would never do it. And then once you get used to it, then they ratchet it down, and it's just how far they're going to be able to go. And Alex Jones is a perfect example here. And this is a minute and 39. We're going to go through the entire thing. And there are some things here you might not catch unless you spend a lot of time in courtrooms. I just got out of a courtroom today. That's why I'm a little bit late getting to the microphone myself. So I'm going to, again, start it over. But before I start, I want you to understand something called the attorney-client privilege. And I want you to understand how sacrosanct the attorney-client privilege was in this country before the age of Trump. Before the age of Trump, basically, it was almost impenetrable. There's a few exceptions to the attorney-client privilege. One is the crime fraud exception. You do not have a privilege. You do not have a right to keep communications with an attorney if you and the attorney are engaged in a crime, or even if you're not engaged in a crime with the attorney, but you advise the attorney of a future crime. That's not something the attorney has to keep quiet. It's only past crimes that would be the case for pretty obvious reasons. I don't think I need to explain that to an audience as sophisticated as you guys are. But I do want you to understand this, that only the client can waive the attorney-client privilege. So I'm going to start this over again. You're going to hear me say, your lawyers gave this to me, right? And I'm going to tell you, it may not sound like a lot, but when I break this down, there's going to be something about this that you might not catch, but any lawyer would catch it. Right? And the reason he's doing this is because he knows the fix is in. He knows the judge hates Alex Jones. The judge has already been railroaded by this judge many times. The first and foremost is they basically filed a lawsuit. Immediately, Jones tried to get it dismissed. He tried to say, while I'm trying to get it dismissed, there should be no discovery. The judge disagreed, said, I'm going to give you limited discovery. And then they basically filed the appeal of the dismissal decision. And in the meantime said, yeah, we disagree with you. We're going to appeal your discovery ruling. Long story short, eventually the court came down and said, hey, I don't like the fact that you disagree with me on my discovery ruling, and so I'm going to hold you in default. Now, that is called the death penalty in legal parlance. That's what we call it. That's the death penalty. That's, well, if you do that, then now I can't even mount a defense. And the only question is how much money they get. That would be correct, Mr. Jones. So that's what they've done to him. Now, that they've gone forward and they're basically, now don't misunderstand. I mean, eventually Jones is going to get his day in court and be able to appeal all this. And if the appellate courts do what they should do, all this should be reversed. And it should go back down, and the judge should be instructed, look, you can have a sanction for a discovery violation, but it needs to be attorney's fees or a fine or something like that. You can't just wipe out the guy's whole defense. But before I get to that, anyway, you understand where we are in this posture of this judge. She's already given him the death sentence. He can't mount a defense at all. We basically come down here and we're just how much money you're going to get. Now, you'd think at that point they'd give the guy a fair shot. Oh, no. I want you to understand the type of people you're dealing with. And one more thing before we get to that. I also want you to understand yesterday, the reason I know this clip is because when I got off the golf course yesterday, we got blown off for weather again, so we got off early. I come to my phone, I pick it up, and this thing is everywhere. And left-wing people are celebrating this. I want you to understand these people, I can say it all the time, they're emotionalized, they're not well. When people they don't like or disagree with, it's not just a disagreement with these people. It's not just, well, you voted one way, I voted the other way, I'll get you next time. No, you voted the other way, you're evil, you should be put in a gulag, we should take all your money. I mean, this is what they believe. They celebrate this stuff, right? Anyway, let's start it over again. I want to see if you catch this now that you know that attorney-client privilege can only be waived by the client. So I should have told you this, I meant to. So here's the rule. If you get something, and I promise you folks, this is the rule. If you get something that you recognize as privileged, as an attorney ethically, right, you are supposed to not look at it. You are supposed to immediately tell the other side, did you mean to send me this? And give the other side a chance to go, oh, you know what? I did not, in fact, mean to do that, and I would appreciate it if you would not look at it and send it back, right? I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be done. This is not gotcha law. Gotcha law is more the old demurrer system that we broke away from in England. They have a lot of stuff there where if you mess up, it's too bad. Not in America. And the reason for that basically is, folks, I say this all the time, but our system, it has to be followed. Every other way of doing it leads to tyranny, leads to not having a constitutional right, leads to no freedom. That's why the British system, it's a lot easier to get attorney's fees because that favors wealthy people. Well, we're all going to go in there and have a free-for-all. Can you afford to pay your attorney and my attorney if you lose? Oh, I can, right? I'm Bill Gates. I'm Elon Musk. I'm Donald Trump. I can lose, pay my attorney, your attorney. Fine. You can't do that. I can't tell you how many people have gone and done something and it's not the result they wanted. They want to go up on appeal. Like, we'll just have to take it because at this point we can't afford to keep going. So that's one of the reasons you don't do it. Same thing with this gotcha stuff. It should be done on the merits. It should be done based on who's right under the law and the facts, not under these, I got you type of thing. So knowing all that, just take a listen to this again. He starts asking him about, do you know?
Did you know that 12 days ago, your attorneys messed up? They sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years.
Now, you hear that? Now, folks, as soon as I heard it, I was like, dude, I can't believe you're saying that in front of a judge. I mean, the tone ought to be something more like, Mr. Jones, I don't know if you're aware, but we came into possession of a phone and we suspected it had attorney-client privilege information on it. And we, as our duty is, we let your lawyers know and they claimed you waived this privilege. Are you aware of this, sir? Like, it should have been a lot more hat in hand. And again, I think that's far more effective because, hey, you still got the stuff. You haven't given it back. You're not going to, right? But notice the nasty, ooh, I gotcha. Your lawyer screwed up. And by the way, they didn't do anything. And so after 10 days, there's no 10 days, folks. That's not the way any of this works. Now, the way it should have worked is he apparently didn't follow his ethical obligation. Now, if that, and folks, I can't tell you, I wish I could, but this is not the first time I've seen this happen. So what you then have to do is you have to file a motion with the court to suppress the stuff and make them give it back, and motions in limine not to use it. Now, of course, here's the other problem with this quote-unquote gotcha moment that the media is running with. You're supposed to turn over everything you have that you're going to use to examine a witness. Alex Jones is not only a witness, he's a flipping party. So that information should have been given over so that this should not have come as a surprise to anyone here. So this is very suspicious. Very suspicious what's going on here so far for those two reasons. But again, I want you to understand how the judge sits here, doesn't even so far, I'm surprised. I would think 99.9% of judges would step in here and go, now, sir, are you saying that they completely waive this privilege? This seems odd to me, But nothing happens here. They keep going on. So there's a couple other points I want to make.
Informed, did not take any steps to identify it as privileged or protect it in any way. And as of 2 days ago, it fell free and clear into my possession. And that is how I know you lied to me.
All right, so there you go. So he's claiming they didn't do anything. And if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, you can see Alex Jones's lawyer does not seem to be surprised by any of this. So this is all theater to some extent by this lawyer claiming I got something. They gave him the phone, folks. And there may have been some things in there that, might have arguably been privileged. But my guess is they were just like, arguably we could claim it's privilege. But A, it's not hurting us, so let's let them have it. Or B, if we try, they're going to yell at the judge, and the judge is going to make us give it anyway, so just give it to him. But anyway, let's see what he lied about.
Did you know that?
I told you the truth. This is your Perry Mason moment. I gave them my phone, and then...
Mr. Jones, you need to answer the question.
No,
Did you know this happened?
No, I didn't know this happened. But, I told you I gave them the phone over.
Mr. Jones, in discovery, you were asked, do you have Sandy Hook text messages on your phone? And you said no, correct? You said that under oath, Mr. Jones, didn't you?
If I was mistaken, but you got the messages right there.
You know what perjury is, right?
Now, again, this is highly improper. Again, judges won't let you do it, folks. And there's a reason why judges won't let you do it, because it implies, in front of jurors, by the way, that you're lying. If you're lying, then get on to proving I'm lying, which there's a way to do it. You have to lay up what's called a foundation. So you have to say, Mr. Jones, do you recall when I asked you this question under oath? And that signals to the witness and to the court and everybody in there, they know, right? Do you remember when I asked you this, right? They're going to lay the foundation for you answered one way. And then you're now answering another way. Or we have evidence that there's evidence that you would have answered another way. That's called laying the foundation. You can't lay the foundation. Do you know what perjury is? Do you know it's a crime to lie? It's just highly inappropriate. And you can understand why, because then at that point, what if he never can lay the foundation and never set up the predicates? But now he's already implied that you're a liar and that you ought to be concerned about perjury, right? Imagine that. And imagine at this point, the judge letting this kind of stuff happen.
Before we go any further, you know what it is.
Yes, I do. I'm not a tech guy. I told you I gave, in my testimony, the phone to the lawyers before, whatever, and so you got my phone, but we didn't give it to you.
No, Mr. Jones, one more time. Please remember, if you need to assert your Fifth Amendment, you can. I need you to know that you can do that. But you testify.
If you need to assert your Fifth Amendment privilege, goodness, this is just bad.
Previously, that you personally searched your phone for the phrase Sandy Hook, and there were no messages. You said that under oath.
Yes.
And you lied when you said it.
No, I did not lie.
Now, that's the end of that particular bit, but let me explain to you why this is not what everybody yesterday was claiming it was. I do searches all the time. In fact, I did one before we got on here because I had to file something with a court. And in Georgia, unfortunately, we have two court systems. We have one that is very, very good. These are electronic filing systems. And then we have another one that's just awful beyond awful. And so when you go to the county and you put in the case number, if you don't put it in exactly however the computer wants you to put it in, it won't catch it. So, for example, if it's 22-A-4241-3, if you don't put that in exactly right, it won't catch it, right? And then that's fine. Once you know the rule is, the numbers, the dashes, the capital A, the dashes, and then the number of the judge, that's fine. But then you go to another county, and they have a different rule. So then it's 22A with no dashes, right? And then you don't put the number of the judge afterwards, right? And you say, okay, fine. The case number's not coming up. Now, you would think it'd be easy enough because you have to do it by county, that it would go, well, here are all the ones that are close to what you're at, right? Let me pull up these 12. No, it doesn't do that. The other system, by the way, does exactly that. What you would expect, right, is if you don't exactly have the rule of this county right, well, here's the 10 that are kind of close to what you're saying. Is one of these it? No, of course not. And then, so it'll let you look it up by name. You go, that's no problem. Well, here's the problem. If you have a client that files tons of lawsuits. And for example, I have a bunch of clients that are business clients that install things, right? They have lawsuits against thousands of people. So putting in their name does you no good, right? And then if you put in the name of the resident, sometimes it's the same problem. Some counties you got to capitalize the first name, some you don't. Anyway, you get the whole point. But the point I'm making here is he says he searched for Sandy Hook. Well, maybe I look on my phone all the time for things I know that are in there. For example, one of my favorite things to do is go to my messages and search for conversations I've had with people, and I'll put things in I know they're in there, yet they don't pop up digitally. I don't know why. So that's what struck me when you said do a search on your phone. Well, it depends on the type of phone he has. It depends on the type of software. I mean, some softwares are very good that if you put in Sandy Hook, lowercase, on both ends, it'll capture Sandy Hook. It'll capture Sandy Hook without a space. It'll capture it if it's a capital S and a capital H and not, and some won't, right? But this whole notion here that he lied because I asked you to do a search, you said you did a search and it didn't come up, that didn't prove anything. Maybe he's not good at tech stuff. But anyway, I've got one more Alex Jones. I wanted you just to get how petty what's going on there and understand it. So here's another exchange they had about what's going on with whether or not he believes what happened in Sandy Hook is real. Now, the big problem he's got out here, the big major league problem, is that he went on the air and basically said this was a false flag and it was staged. Now, I don't care how you feel about that. Obviously, you probably know it's not a very nice thing, but I'm the kind of person that's just going to shrug my shoulders and be like, yeah, you shouldn't say that kind of thing, but this is what's called freedom, right? And the flip side of that is where you have people like this getting all upset and suing people and shutting him down and because they don't like his voice. So I weigh at those two things and I go, well, you know what? I'm going to go with some people being able to say bombastic things on air, and if you don't like it, just turn it off or compete with it, whatever. But again, a lot of people don't like him. They don't like the fact that he said it. And then the parents now eventually got around to suing him. I'm not going to go through that again. But anyway, so here's an exchange about whether or not he believes Sandy Hook happened, whether it's real or not. And again, you're going to get to the end. You're going to see again just how biased the judge is. Take a listen.
End of 2014. We've had a video received in evidence of you stating your belief at that time that no one died at Sandy Hook, that the whole thing was fake. Do you understand, as you sit here today, how crazy that is?
I have said before that there have been so many lies and so many things in the past, and I was under a lot of pressure. And I truly, when I said those statements, when I say something, I mean it, that I really could believe that it was totally staged at that point. And I was basing that off of really Steve Puchenik, who has been a very prestigious person.
Do you understand now that it was absolutely irresponsible of you to do that?
It was, especially since I've met the parents, and it's 100% real, as I said on the radio yesterday, and as I said here yesterday, it's 100% real, and the media still ran with...
So before we get to that, because that's the major point I wanted to cover here, but see, notice now that they brought him to heel, of course it's not going to be enough, right? I mean, he said what he said. You ought to be able to say what you want to say, and even if people don't like it, even if it's offensive, again, it's still legal, right? Unless it crosses a legal boundary. Now here, arguably, they're trying to claim it did cross the legal boundary. The problem is that his defense got struck, right? I mean, if it did, why wouldn't you be able to prove it without having to have him in default and having declared to have violated it, right? You should have to go to the jury and prove the elements of defamation, which, by the way, based on what I've seen in this locality, that shouldn't have been hard to do. But anyway, he's going to get now to the media where have you taken it back? The media won't let me take it back. I'm going to back it up just a bit so you make sure you get that exchange. But here he is now talking about the media reaction now that he's trying to, quote unquote, take it back.
And as I said here yesterday, it's 100% real. And the media still ran with lies that I was saying it wasn't real on air yesterday. It's incredible. They won't let me take it back. They just want to keep me in the position of being the Sandy Hook man. My son got confronted yesterday.
Projection, speculation as to what the media wants. Mr. Jones is just being on the show.
Sustained.
I wish you could have seen his reaction. Those of you watching on YouTube saw his reaction. It was the same reaction as mine, is that he objects as to what the media Come on, folks. I mean, that's about as petty as you're going to get. Of course, the judge sustains it. So Christopher Wray is up there testifying at Capitol Hill. And, folks, we got to get to the point where we stop getting gratified by this. This was in my feed. This is from Benny Johnson's feed. Senator Ted Cruz grills FBI Director Christopher Wray on why one of the FBI agents in charge who oversaw the Whitner kidnapping incident was promoted to the D.C. FBI field office and is handling the January 6th investigation. Take a listen.
That case ended up an absolute debacle where the 4 people who went to trial, 2 of them were acquitted, 2 received mistrials. None of them were convicted on even a single charge, and the basis of the defense was entrapment, that the FBI, that paid enforcements for the FBI, had suggested and had incited the conduct. Let me ask you, how many FBI agents were disciplined or reprimanded after that disastrous case and the misconduct that led to every defendant being acquitted or having a mistrial on every charge?
Senator, I can't comment on a personnel matter. I can tell you that that case, as I understand it, is now pending a retrial, as I understand it.
Well, the special...
Well, it's only pending a retrial for a couple because the jury acquitted a few, and then a few there was declared a mistrial because of a hung jury. So they're retrying them again, believe it or not. But anyway, it continues.
In charge of that case has now been sent to D.C., to the Washington, D.C. office, and now leads the investigation regarding January 6th. Is that correct?
That doesn't sound right to me.
That does not sound right. The name of the individual is Stephen D'Antuono. He was run out of the FBI Detroit field office. And by the way, I will point out that the lead investigator, Special Agent Track, are you aware that he was apparently fired for allegedly beating his wife after coming home from a swingers party?
Anyway, folks, this goes on, and we see this, I don't know, every 6 months or so. If the Republicans take either the House or the Senate, and it increasingly looks like they will take the House but not the Senate, you're going to see more hearings of stuff like this. And we got to stop getting happy about this. I mean, people are all celebrating it and bragging about the way that, Ted Cruz and maybe Rand Paul or somebody go after FBI Director Wray. It doesn't matter to Hill of Beans. I mean, things just go on. I mean, they basically set up these people in Michigan. They set this whole thing up. They influenced an election, right? And then everybody just goes on about their way. And he doesn't even have to explain in Congress whether somebody got disciplined. And in fact, it looks like people got promoted. So Ron DeSantis had this to say last day or so. And again, it's worth remembering, so I just let him say this. But this, folks, this is the type of stuff that should really matter, and unfortunately, it doesn't matter anymore.
They would shame people for even leaving their house in April, May 2020, and you can't do it. And some people wanted to bury loved ones. They wanted to do this. And the argument people were making is, well, wait a minute, I can look at the risk of COVID, and it's something that I'm willing to accept because these things mean more to me, to be able to bury a loved one or to be able to do things with my family. And the public health establishment, oh, no, you can't make that kind of cost-benefit analysis. Then, when the George Floyd riots were happening, they actually wrote a letter with thousands of these people signing it saying, we do not believe that rioting and protesting is bad for COVID, that you can do it. Go ahead. Because we think it's so important that you have to do it. And then they said, but this doesn't mean we support all protests. If you're protesting lockdown policies or other things, then you can't do that. And that's when I knew these people are a bunch of frauds. I mean, how ridiculous.
Anyway, you do have certain situations in places like Florida where if you basically control the whole entire state up and down, and as near as I can tell, you control the executive branch, you control most of the judiciary, right? And so you don't have, you don't have to worry, and of course the legislature. But if you have a place like we saw yesterday with Kansas or places like North Carolina, people can get away with things like Christopher Wray's getting with, the FBI's getting away with, and nothing ever happens, and the system only goes one way. So there's a lot of talk out there about digital wallets and carbon footprints. And I saw this. This is the CEO of a bank out there. This is in Europe, but it applies equally here. I want you to understand how these people, how they think these types of things are going to work in practice. So take a listen to this, and you're going to understand how ESG and carbon footprints and carbon wallets or digital wallets or these types of things, vaccination cards. This is how they're going to work in real practice. Take a listen.
Your iPhone in a digital form. It entails just about everything the government would like to know about you. And yesterday in the Dutch media, we saw a perfect example of what it could entail in the near future. We had the CEO of one of the largest Dutch banks say, why don't we start with a personal carbon credit? Oh. A carbon wallet, she called it, actually. Yeah. So right in line with the plans that the World Economic Forum people have for us. And she said it in a way that was particularly funny. She said, well, if everyone gets an individual personal carbon credit, why don't we make it so that rich people who, for example, want to go on holiday a little too often can buy personal carbon credit from other people who, for example, can't afford buying plane tickets or eating meat too often. So we can that way swap it out.
Oh, so
anyway, so sort of the idea about these types of things and the technology that's coming up, they're going to be able to do all kinds of things. So, I mean, she's only scratching the surface there. Once you have a carbon or a digital wallet or carbon footprint or whatever you want to call it, right? And once I can see on your phone and I know, oh, well, you've had 2 hamburgers this week. Okay, well, you're done for the month. You can't have any more red meat. Right? And then what I can do is if you go out and you try to buy red meat, Kroger won't sell it to you. Publix won't sell it to you. The local place, won't let you buy it at the store, right? If you go to buy gasoline, and they're already doing stuff like this in China, folks. And if you don't understand that they're able to do it with if things are leaked to your iPhone and things like that, have you gotten your booster, everything can be shut down just in a moment. You can't buy anything, no matter what it is. Anyway, folks, that stuff is coming a lot faster than you would think. So yesterday we got another ruling from Judge Ahmet Mehta, and here's this is from federal judge rejects Trump's absolute immunity claim and refuses to dismiss lawsuits. As per usual, we pull this stuff up. It's a very short opinion. This was not really particularly news, but basically 4 defendants are suing Trump. And Judge Ahmet Mehta, he's a Obama appointee. He is hyper partisan. He lives in D.C., which means he lives in a completely different world than the rest of us. So anyway, the opinion reads, in these 3 matters, 4 U.S. Capitol police officers have sued former President Donald Trump for damages arising from injuries they sustained during the events of January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol building. Plaintiffs' allegations and claims are largely the same as those advanced in U.S. Capitol Police plaintiffs in Blasingame versus Trump. In nearly identical worded motions, President Trump has moved to dismiss all 3 actions on one ground. He is absolutely immune from suit because the acts complained of fall within the outer perimeter of his presidential responsibilities. Now, what does that mean? This is very simple. What it means is if you are the president of the United States, you are not personally liable for the actions you take as an individual, right? And it's pretty common sense. So is the Attorney General. So is the head of the Department of Defense. Every person you want to think of, right? They as long as they're acting within their professional responsibilities, you can't sue them individually. Well, of course there are exceptions to that. If you're acting well outside the outer perimeter of what you're supposed to be doing, then obviously you wouldn't have immunity. So hypothetically, if Trump had, on his weekend, went out and drove his car individually when he wasn't, working for the country and did something, but there's a scenario whereby he could be found liable, right? But it almost never would come into a situation where you're acting as the president of the United States, right? So anyway, you basically understand the idea. So Judge Mehta said, oh, no, you weren't. So let's figure out what he was doing real quickly. Well, the court already rejected President Trump's assertion of immunity in Blasingame. The court does so again. The court does not needlessly repeat its reasoning here, but simply adopts and incorporates it by reference. See generally holding, and again he refers back to the Blasingame case. Trump's alleged actions here, quote, entirely concerned his efforts to remain in office for a second term and therefore do not fall within the outer perimeter of a presidential official responsibilities. Now, I want you to understand, folks, again, this is how they start it. They go after somebody that a lot of people don't like. And basically, if you're in D.C., that's a Republican because D.C., overwhelmingly, and you can see the way they're treating anybody that has anything to do with January 6th. You can see that. And so all that's basically doing is completely changing the game. And again, what concerns me here is less about Trump. I mean, I believe eventually the D.C. Circuit will overrule Judge Mehta here. And I'm pretty sure if they don't, that the Supreme Court will, and establish the rule of law and the Constitution back to where it should be. But I want you to just try and imagine how on earth you can get from January 6th, speaking at the rally, trying to get people to peacefully, patriotically, that you want them to make noise during the certification process because you want objections to happen. You think the election didn't go down the way it was supposed to go down. I mean, explain to me how you're not acting as the president of the United States of America. I mean, and he says this and this is the other thing that bothers me because they never listen to anyone else. They never know how their stuff just doesn't sound well when you get outside of circles where everybody thinks like you do. Entirely concerned his efforts to remain in office for a second term. So what? So what? I mean, if he really believed that, what he was doing was proper under the Constitution, and if he really believed that there were inappropriate things that happened, so what? It doesn't matter. I mean, again, this whole notion, and again, it is ironic that Democrats like Mehta have here that, well, if you do something that happens to benefit you as well as the country, why you're acting in your own interest. What? How do you figure that? I mean, if that were the case, then how does Nancy Pelosi get away with doing anything she does? I mean, she's never done anything in her entire career that didn't benefit Nancy Pelosi. So anyway, while all that's going on, we'll give you some just craziness out there. So our friends at Libs of TikTok put out yesterday another of these videos from teachers. And folks, you wonder how people like Judge Amit Mehta come up and they make these idiotic rulings, and then they make them again, and then they say these statements as if there's some sort of grand wisdom in there, and of course there's nothing of the kind. But when you wonder why that is, well, imagine the schools they went to, imagine the type of education they got. They never were told that they were wrong. They were never told that no, this isn't right. There's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. Sometimes there's shades of gray, sometimes they're not shades of gray. And we have to follow this thing called reality, right? Well, imagine if there were no pronouns. Imagine if you could just change your identity. And I'm not just talking about your sexual preference. I mean, I'm talking about your actual identity as a man or a woman or all this stuff. So here's a teacher trying to explain to us, trying to get help from the people out there in TikTok whether or not she's getting this pronoun thing right. Take a listen.
Okay, TikTok, I really need your help here on this one. I'm a teacher. I teach 5th and 6th grade, and this morning, I don't know, somehow the concept of pronouns came up. And one of my students said, well, Miss Odell, did you even ask me my pronouns? And I was like, whoa, I hadn't actually asked him his pronouns, and I had called him a him, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I haven't actually asked you what your pronouns are, and what are they? And he said, Banana said, banana and rock. And I was like, dude, no, don't mess around. I was actually really upset because I thought he was making fun of it. And in fact, I'm still pretty sure he was making fun of it. And, but they all agreed, no, you can choose anything. Banana, rock, if you want banana and rock to be a pronoun, banana and rock's a pronoun. Is it? TikTok, tell me.
Is banana and rock pronouns that you can have, folks? I mean, folks, these are kids, and they're being educated by people that don't know if they're kidding or if they're not. Or I mean, folks, let me say it this way. I mean, if you're a kid and you're growing up, there are a lot of things that go on in your life, a lot of things you're trying to figure out, a lot of knowledge you're trying to acquire, and then some kids adjust better than other kids. Why in the world would you want to bring in something like, there are these lighthouses and these safe havens, and they're called pronouns. It's called math. You don't need to wonder that 2 + 2 is going to change. 2 + 2 is always going to be 4. 2 + 3 is 5. You get the idea, right? Why would you want to change and add all this stuff into it, right? And so it's one of these things you wonder who's running the asylum. But anyway, that you're pretty much all up to date. I do want to tell you that a couple of things. One, it looks like the Pitts bill has now passed. And so it passed, based on what I heard, with rather than $400 billion of just pork in there, it looks like it's $280 billion only 11 Republicans voted against it. So again, that's just how the game works, and that's why I said about having a Republican as head of the FBI. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. And so you can have most of the Republican Party, basically will sign on to a bill that just adds a bunch of pork. And I'm sure there were some legitimate things that were in there, but anytime the Democrats get anything, they just add on pork, and it basically gets through because the system is rigged to go one way. The other news out there is that Sweden and Finland, the Senate has approved their going into NATO. Only one person voted against. I think that was Chuck Hawley, or whatever, not Chuck Hawley. I can't think of his name. Doesn't matter. One person voted against it. Rand Paul voted president. Don't know why he didn't have the courage to vote against it. And those of you that think that's a good idea, obviously everybody in the Senate except one person or two, I guess, if you count Rand Paul, think it is a good idea. I want you to understand, folks, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, otherwise known as NATO, was formed after World War II to fight the United Soviet Socialist Republics and the Warsaw Pact, which was the communist nations outside of them, in addition to them. And the Warsaw Pact has gone away years and years and years ago, and we are now still growing NATO. All right? Now, if that gives you some sort of pride or something, okay, but I want you to understand what you're signing up to. Now you've got two more countries where if they get into a regional dispute, you are duty-bound to defend them. Okay? Duty-bound. I don't understand what that has to do with our safety. I understood after World War II because you had a lot of those people in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that were basically the allies that we all got together and defeated the Germans. But now I don't understand what it is other than just to create more situations for us to create more bombs and more money to more people. I literally don't understand what we get out of that. I really don't. Just moving in the wrong direction if you ask me. But anyway, you're now all caught up to date of the news of the day. And if you enjoyed this live stream, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.